Well, again, I say good morning to you, and it's great to see you here, and I trust that if you are in a desperate place, you'll find Christ a little closer today. He's here, and He's chosen to meet with us when we gather together just like this. And so stay close to your church family and keep growing spiritually, as we heard last week. So appreciate the Parks being here and sharing with you and with us, and they've just been a motivation and encouragement to all of us, and we thank God for them. We are in a series called One Hit Wonders, and we're continuing this series today, and there'll be a couple of special things that happen for a couple of weeks after today, and then I'll be coming back to the One Hit Wonder series, and so we're going to be in this for just a little while yet. The One Hit Wonders usually references a musical artist that has had at least one hit that has reached the top 40 music charts and things, and then they go on to maybe they sing some other songs and do other things, but that one hit, it kind of becomes their signature song. And we've been applying that idea to the books of the Bible that only have one chapter. And so the book of the Bible that we're going to look at today, it's actually a letter that John wrote, the Apostle John wrote to a very special lady. And I'm kind of excited. Will, when he was a little boy, used to say excited. I'm kind of excited to share with you some of the things that I'm learning in this book. It's very thrilling to me to learn something new from the Bible, and it sparks the imagination, and it also helps inform my faith. And so we're definitely going to look at Second John together, and we're going to work our way through it together. And it's only about 13 verses. You can read it in a couple of minutes, and we're going to do that in just a second. But we need to work our way through it to kind of know what's here, and then I want to apply it to a unique situation, and we're going to watch a couple of videos that help us to do that. And then another objective I have, it's kind of a tall order this morning, but another objective I have is the hope that we'll have an idea for how to work through some of the thorny issues that we all face today. How to answer those controversial questions, especially when they come to us via our family members or our close friends or relatives, and knowing how to work through those thorny issues. And you'll know a little bit about that as we kind of wrap it up here today. And so as we look at 2 John, we're going to work our way through this. Again, it's a very short book. But what's basically happening is John has lived longer than most of the other apostles. Most people feel like he was probably a teenager when he was a disciple of Jesus, and so he was one of the younger ones. And so he's still alive in 85, 90, 95 AD. And he was incarcerated a couple different times. And perhaps I'll share a little bit more about his story and his biography in upcoming days. But it could be that he was 60, 70 years after the Christ event when the letter of 2 John's written. And what's interesting is that many of the eyewitnesses are dying off. And so John is one of there's a few eyewitnesses left, and John's one of them, and most of the apostles have gone now, and he's kind of alone in a way. And he's leading, and per the reading that we're going to read in just a second, we're going to see that there's evidently a lady who was a very gracious hostess. And she was entertaining, because this is pre-church building days. She was entertaining some itinerant evangelists and teachers who would come through. And we have to keep in mind, this was pre-Bible days. They had bits and pieces of the Bible, the formal canon. What do I mean by that? It's the 66 books of the Bible, especially the 27 New Testament books. That had not come together, does not come together in a formal way until the 300s AD. And so you've got bits and pieces of Scripture, letters here and there, and God would use these to edify the body, the new believers scattered throughout in home churches throughout the world. But also there were itinerant evangelists and teachers, and those who would come by, they would pass through town, and those who maybe had witnessed some things, and they could share and build up the people's faith that they would encounter. And so there was a hostess who was happy to entertain these. And John had a concern, though, because they were saying things, some of the people were saying things that he really would not affirm. And that really nobody could really verify. And so this was John's concern. And so he writes a letter to this gracious lady. And on verse number 1, slide number 3, we read, and it begins this way. The elder to the lady chosen by God. It's interesting because he doesn't say his name forthright. He's so well known that he's lovingly referred to by this time as the elder. It's like those one-word celebrity names that we hear sometimes, Sting or Bono or Enya or Madonna. There's some other names that we can just throw out one name and you know who they are. Well, John was that kind of a Christ follower. They knew him as the elder. This is the guy that's been around longer than anybody else. He's eyewitness. He's one of the last remaining eyewitnesses. It implies he's been seasoned by life. He's wise. He has a lot to offer. His testimony is a valuable one. And so he just references himself as the elder. And everybody knows who he is. To the lady chosen by God. And you know, as I'm studying this, it's just intriguing to me. A lot of people want to make it kind of a metaphor for the church at large that he was writing to. But I think we'd be better off, and it would make more sense of this little 13-verse letter if we actually viewed it as a lady, an actual lady who has been chosen by God to do a special thing. And let's just let it stand at face value as we work our way through this. You know, some have suggested that the chosen lady could have been Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I'm intrigued by that. That sparks my interpretational imagination. In fact, I'm going to work from that assumption today as we work our way through this. You know, Mary was chosen by God. She was chosen by God to bear a son. And when her oldest virgin-born son, Jesus, was on the cross, and evidently Joseph, Mary's husband, was no longer in the picture, Jesus assumed the responsibility of his family, and he assured that his mother had someone to take care of him when he was gone, and that someone was Apostle John. In fact, on slide number 8, we read in John 19, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciples whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son. My lady, here is your son. And to the disciple, here is your mother." And from that time on, this disciple took her into his home. And what's really intriguing is in John's gospel, he never calls Mary by her name. He simply refers to her as Jesus' mother. And he was uncomfortable, I take it, in calling his own mother by name. Jesus had kind of vested him with that responsibility. And so even to this day, years after the Christ event, John is still hesitant to call Mary by her name. Instead, he references her as the chosen lady. The chosen lady. Now, what if this was actually John's home that Mary was staying in? That would make his home a home with a reputation. Right? If this was John's home, if John was maybe incarcerated on the Isle of Patmos, like many scholars feel that he was, and if Mary is living in his home, in his absence, and she's entertaining people to come in and out her door, and maybe there's some concerns about whom she's having hosting in her home, who are proclaiming a certain message, maybe saying about things about Jesus that John would never affirm, wouldn't it make it a little more critical that John would write what he writes in the letter of 2 John? Especially when he says in a few verses, don't welcome them into your home. Why? Because my lady, Mary, my mama, okay, by assignment, I want you to make sure that the gospel is clearly proclaimed. I don't want these aberrant views of Jesus circulating, especially under my name. Be careful, because we have to balance truth and love. And it's important to love all people, but it's important also that we present a reliable view of truth. And so John's very concerned about those twin themes of love and truth. And so he says, my lady, let's be careful now. You're a chosen lady. I've been responsible for you. And to the lady chosen by God and to her children, Mary had other children after Jesus, whom I love in the truth, not only I, but also who know the truth. And by the truth, we look later in verse 9, John meant the teachings of Christ. That's what he meant when he says that those who walk in the truth, those who walk in the teachings of Jesus. You see, there was those in the first century who were deceivers and antichrists, 2 John 7 says, and they were saying something about Jesus that Jesus would never say, asserting things about Jesus would have never asserted, or John, the eyewitness, one of the last living ones, would have never asserted. And so John's concerned about that. He's concerned about truth. Because the truth, verse 2, which lives in us and will be with us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace, my chosen lady. He offers a triple blessing. From God the Father and from Jesus Christ the Father's Son, they will be with us in truth and love, my lady. It's truth and love. It's not just love. It's truth and love. It's not just truth. It's truth and love. Love and truth. The two are inseparable in John's writings. And truth and love have to be together or they're not themselves. They don't act right. They're brother and sister, and without the tandem, both of them, they don't respond right, work right, act right, and have the effect they need to have in the world. They have to operate together. We could say that love and truth are the dual engines of the Christian life. Truth without love is cold, it's distant, it's harsh, it's judgmental. Love without truth is shallow, it's sentimental, it's emotional, it tolerates anything and everything. You see, truth without love, love without truth, that doesn't change people, and it doesn't accurately represent Jesus and His teachings in the world. But truth and love in balanced proportion applied together, that's what changes people. And it's so important to John that we live that message out. So it could be applied this way. Maybe someone would say, well, you hold to something, and I appreciate that, but you love me even if I don't hold to that belief. That's truth and love. And not only do you hold to something, you actually live it out, and you really love me because you tell me what I need to hear, not just what I want to hear. You see, that's truth and love. And John says that's got to be married. Those two concepts have to be married together. It's truth and love. And there's no greater time, especially today, when that message has to be proclaimed and lived out. Truth and love. Thank you for holding to the truth. Thank you for loving me even though I don't hold to your version of what you say is the truth. And thank you for living it out. Because, and John says, this is what fellowship is based on. It's what will change lives. It's what will impact a community in the long term. John says, it has given me great joy to find some of your children, verse 4, slide 4, walking in the truth. Of course, on slide number 9 and 10, we see that Jesus had siblings. Slide number 9 and 10. He had siblings. You know, Jesus was a virgin-born, firstborn of Mary. And he was given responsibility for Mary. Somehow Joseph drops out of the gospel picture, and we don't know what happens to Joseph. But after Jesus was born, Mary had some children as well, at least 6 of them, because we see in various places in the gospel that Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him. His mother and brothers arrived. Go to the next slide. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Matthew writes, isn't his mother's name Mary? Aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? So Jesus had 4 brothers. Aren't all his sisters? That's plural, so he had 2 or more sisters. Where then did this man get all these things? And so they just kind of, Matthew references it in sharing some other things and exploring some bigger things. So Jesus has this family, Mary has a family post-Jesus, and not all of them walked in truth. How does that make you feel? I mean, first of all, how would you like to have Jesus as an older brother? Wouldn't that be awful? You know? Oh, no. Jesus did it this way. Yeah. Jesus. That's all I've ever heard is Jesus. I'm my own person, right? It'd be horrible to have Jesus as an older brother, older sibling. But he was. And there were many in this family, and in fact, many of them did not believe until after the resurrection. And evidently, according to what John says here, and I don't think we're overanalyzing, there were some who were still hesitant to walk in the truth of Jesus. Some of his own siblings. And so John makes note of this, and then he says, "And now, dear lady, my mama, by assignment, I am not writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love." And so walking in love is an act of obedience. It goes beyond the realm of feeling and emotion. And so when we obey God, we do what is best for others. And that's what love is. Love isn't just a sentimental, gushy emotion. It's also rooted in truth and value and purpose. And Jesus and John is trying to encourage his mama by assignment. I want you not just to love people. I want you to make sure that the truth is maintained. You know what I think happened? I think as the years rolled by, anybody and everybody that came along, Mary, the mother of Jesus, loved to hear them talk about her son. She loved to hear people talk about the theological impact, the cosmological impact, the resurrection, the life of Jesus. I bet she would hang on every word. And finally, it comes to a point here in their journey, their faith journey, where people were beginning to say things that didn't matter really what they were saying. It's just that if you want to talk about Jesus, I'm game. He's my boy. And she's ready to have that conversation. And John says, "Oh, my lady, now listen, it's important that we're careful in who we allow in our home, especially if it's flying under my banner, our banner. Let's be careful what we say and what we advance and promote. And we have to be careful about those who come along proclaiming they have this new insight into the life of Jesus. And I've never heard anything about that, nor heard Jesus say anything about that. And so let's be careful, my lady." And so this is a letter of caution. The letter of encouragement, the letter of caution. I say this because there are many deceivers, verse 7, who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ is coming in the flesh. I saw him. I witnessed it. They've gone out into the world. Any such person is a deceiver and the Antichrist, he says. "Watch out, my lady, that you do not lose what we have worked for, but what we have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully." John seems to be saying, Mary, we've worked all these years. Let's not forfeit the reward of our labor by messing up here as we close in on the journey. Let's make sure that we're walking in love and truth. We've worked too hard these many years together. I'm going to come back to verse 9, but it says, "Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teaching of Christ does not have God." Anyone who runs ahead. What's that mean? Anybody who surges ahead and they say they have a new insight on what it means to be a Christ follower, or some new insight, some new and novel idea about what the life of Christ meant, and somehow John says they're running ahead and they're asserting that the teachings of Christ don't matter. It's just being a Christian. That's what matters. Let's just take the label. Let's not worry about the teachings. And John says that's running ahead. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, slide 6, do not take them into your house or welcome them. John doesn't say to be rude. He doesn't say, to be unkind, to slam doors in faces. No. He just says, I don't want you to be a base of operation. I don't want our home, I don't want our message that we're proclaiming to be messed up by these half-baked ideas from these itinerant teachers who wander up on your steps and say they want to talk about Jesus. Okay? Mary, I want you to be more discerning, baby. Be more discerning. We've worked too hard to establish a credible witness, a foothold and a toehold in the Asia Minor theater of Christian operation. We hear, we're a witness, we're leading, we're proclaiming, we're sharing. Let's not mess it up. Let's go in truth and love. Keep those married together, Mary. Don't take them into your house, our house, or welcome them. And it makes perfect sense if a spiritual seduction was taking place. If you knew a seducer was coming to your home and you weren't there, and your wife was there alone, and this person has a reputation for seducing people, would you be happy about it while you're drilling the bolts at work or teaching the class or driving? Or would that excite you? Would that make you happy? Would that maybe concern you a little bit? You bet it would. And that's what John's saying. He's incarcerated. He's on the Isle of Patmos. He can't get there right now. Smuggles a letter out. Doesn't use names in case it's confiscated by authority. Uses code names. The elder, the chosen lady, gets this letter out and says, "Be careful, Mary. Be careful. We've worked too hard to forfeit this thing. Anyone who welcomes them shares in their wicked work, Mary." If we're right about this being John's home and Mary, the mother of Jesus, living in it, John would be seen as endorsing something. And John wanted to make sure that it didn't go that route. Well, he says, verse 12, "I have much to write to you, but I do not want to use paper and ink." Some of these things are just case-by-case basis. I really need to have a sit-down and do a face-to-face with you, Mary, and some of the people. Maybe it's been impacted by this. Instead, I hope to visit you and talk with you face-to-face so that our joy may be complete. The children of your sister, perhaps the one that was at crucifixion, John 19, the children of your sister who is chosen by God also, they send their greetings. And that's the little letter of 2 John. Now, I want to apply this. And I want to look at some of the things that he says. And I want to take us back to 2 John verse 9, slide number 5. John says, "Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teachings of Christ does not have God." That's powerful, isn't it? It's sobering. Whoever continues in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. And when we look at that word, run ahead, it means to go beyond. It means to go too far, to be so progressive that you leave someone behind. And that's what was happening, that people were getting so progressive in their theology and some of the other teachings and things, especially as the eyewitnesses were dying off. They were running ahead. They were asserting these things that John could never assert or verify. And it's happening today. People are running on ahead. In fact, maybe you saw the BuzzFeed video, "I'm a Christian, but I'm not." It's running ahead, you see. It's leaving Christ behind. We'll show in just a second, but it purports to present gay, feminist, Christian millennials who are explaining why they don't fit what they see as the stereotypical view of Christians. It features 5 women, 1 man declaring that they aren't homophobic, closed-minded, uneducated, or judgmental. And John would say, well, there's a lot of people who purport to be Christ-following or Christ-loving, and yet they don't follow the things that Christ loved. You know what John says? They don't know Jesus. They don't know Him. If you say, I am a Christian, and yet you turn your back on all that Jesus loved, and you refuse to walk with Christ in obedience to His commands, it's just talk. John says, my lady, we got to be careful, especially as we both near the home stretch in our spiritual journeys. Okay, I want you to watch this. Watch this, and then I'm going to comment on it in just a second. I'm a Christian, but it's all about the label. It's not about Christ. Watch this. Okay. Now, honestly, I look at all those people. I would love to have a conversation and relationship with all of them. A friendly relationship. Really, I would. I would hope that every one of those gals and the guy would feel welcome at Simmons Hill Community Church. But let me step aside from just that idea to dealing with the idea of what was just presented. Okay? And I like how Nate Bostic responds. He says, let me sum up the video for you. I'm Christian, but I won't stand for anything the Word of Christ stands for. I just want to make people like me instead of sharing the only truth that can save them. Nate Bostic. Here's another one by Dara Grace Dixon. She adds, not once was Christ mentioned, or salvation, or sin. This is a misrepresentation of true Christianity. No, I'm not homophobic, she writes. I will be kind and loving to all people, but I will believe God over what society is telling me I must believe. If any of these people are truly Christians, she says, their desire would have been to share the gospel, not clear their own names. You see, so when we take our identity from our sin, and that becomes our label, a transgendered Christian, a feminist Christian, a pedophile Christian, a gay Christian, you're running ahead. You're leaving somebody behind. And John saw it in his tender, loving letter to his mother. He saw it then, and we see it today. Nothing's new. We're leaving somebody behind when we fly under a label, hyphenated Christian label. And John says, let's not do that. In fact, go back and really recheck what you have believed, because what you have believed, you're leaving you're leaving the teachings of your Savior behind. And John says that's a serious deal. Now, I like what Michael Brown has said. Now, he writes in regard to the gay Christian label, and his response really works well on any of the labels that you might talk about. And this is what he says. Allow me to quote him here. He says, of the gay Christian label, he says, if by that you mean, can you be committed to Jesus and serve Him faithfully while still having homosexual attractions, recognizing those attractions as contrary to God's design, and resisting them as sinful, then the answer is yes, of course. Of course. We all have struggles. We have sin in our life. We struggle with maybe lifestyle issues and beliefs and worldview things. Of course you can be a Christ follower and still struggle with an area of sin in your life. Of course. On the other hand, he says, if by gay Christian, or whether it's feminist Christian or transgender Christian or pedophile Christian, if by that you mean, can you be committed to Jesus and serve Him while practicing homosexuality, embracing your homosexual attractions as a gift from God and acting on them, thereby affirming your gay identity, then the answer is absolutely not. You see, it's running ahead. It's leaving somebody behind because you've chosen to identify with the label. Listen, an authentic Christ follower is one who may still sin in some ways, but they're not comfortable with it anymore. They still sin, but they sin less, and it's not as fun as it used to be. Huh? It's not. When you see a light, a better way, your life of sin begins to look, it may still be a tempting thing for you, but it becomes nauseous over time because it feels disrespectful to your sin bearer. And so a pseudo-Christ follower, a label-enhanced Christian, makes peace with their sinful lifestyle, and they live with it, and they call it good. And John says to his dear beloved mother, he says, hey, be careful about that. Be careful, Mary. Because there are some people who are going to read whether it's their sexuality or their political or ideological viewpoints into everything else, and they're going to insist that the Bible be reinterpreted to fit their sexual or political or agenda-driven preference. Mary, Mama, we've come too far to let it go now. We've upheld Jesus. Let's keep Jesus held high. Let's make sure we marry love and truth. Marry love and truth together. That's what's going to see us home. Now I want us to go, we're going to watch another video, really the way the video should have been presented. But before we do, I just would comment, I think that in an effort to be relevant, this BuzzFeed video missed the whole point of Christianity. It's Jesus. It's not my sin. It's not my label. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And yet He's never really mentioned in a video about Christianity. Christianity is about following Jesus. It's about life with Him. It's about abandoning myself to His kingdom. And Dallas Willard once wrote, the great spiritual life writer and thinker, he says, the greatest issue facing the world today, with all its heartbreaking needs, is whether those who by profession or culture are identified as Christians, whether those people will become disciples. will they choose to follow the teachings of Jesus? Students, apprentices, practitioners, all of these concepts roll into the idea of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. Steadily learning about Christ and how to live that life out in the world. So the question this morning is, are we calling ourselves Christians or are we living like Jesus? There's a difference. And I don't want a video such as this defining my faith. I'd rather have the 2,000 years of doctrine, life in Scripture, the amazing power, love, redemption, relationship of Jesus Christ. I'd rather have that as my identity. That's powerful, and that's life-changing. I want people to see Jesus in me. No, I'm a Christian, but not. I don't want that. I'm a Christ follower. He is everything to me. I love Him. He's my Savior. I believe in Him. I trust Him. My sin is beside the point. The identity of the past is beside the point. My ideological beliefs, political viewpoints, it's beside the point. I'm a Christ follower. He's central and the primary theme of my walk with Him and of my Christian life. You see, I am a Christian. But it doesn't preclude the fact that I also endeavor to follow what Jesus taught. Okay? I am a Christian and I'm not perfect. But God does call me to strive to obey Him. Christ loved me and died for me in my worst state. His blood covers my sins. And it demands that I give that a hearing. It demands that I give that some consideration. Okay? It calls me to live beyond my imperfections. I'm a Christian, but I'm not perfect either. I'm a Christian, but I'm not judgmental. However, because I love the Lord and aspire to love the Lord and love people, I can't be silent about sin, Christ, and judgment to come. That's unfair. If you're on a train and the train bridge is out ahead, for me to wave a lantern in the night and try to stop the train from plummeting over the precipice to destruction, is it love if I just sit idly by and let that happen? I'm a Christian, but I'm not judgmental, right? But I can't be silent either. I'm a Christian, but I don't have all the answers. Yet and while I don't have all the answers on every matter, I think the Bible is very clear in who God is, who we are, what sin has done in the world, and what responses to our sin would be appropriate in light of the great sacrifice of Jesus on a cross. I think I got that. Here's how BuzzFeed should have presented it. Watch this. I'm a Christian. Watch this. I don't know what that endless energy guy is eating, but I'd like to have some. Whatever his workout plan is, that would help me out a little. You see what I'm saying? That's what it should have been. That's it. Now we're talking about love and truth, brother and sister married together, making the journey. And that's what our calling is. Now I want us to look at some final thoughts here as we think about this tender, kind letter that Jesus writes. And we're assuming here, kind of making an interpretational call, but I think it helps it to work in a way that maybe makes it a little more personal as we look at this tender, loving letter that Jesus writes to his mother, or his mother by assignment, to Mary, the mother of Jesus. And as he approaches this very tender topic with this very precious chosen lady, I think we get insight into how we have to approach thorny topics today. We have to be very careful how we interact in such a way that we can represent Jesus, represent the truth, and also represent the love of Jesus. And I think John is saying four primary things. And so to make this application especially clear, let's use a hypothetical so as to help us all get a handle on it. Okay? And so let's say a close relative wants you to attend his same-sex wedding ceremony. Let's say that that's the scenario, the hypothetical that we have in front of us. And you know the whole family is going to expect you to be in attendance. The question is, do you go? And if you don't go, what do you do? Well, according to John would have us to sit down in a face-to-face and deal with this issue. And this is about how it would go if we based our response to 2 John. Okay? Slide number 11. There's 4 things that you want to say in that face-to-face meeting. If you're invited to go to a same-sex wedding, okay, I would not decline that via email. I would not decline that even via the RSVP card. I would not decline that over the phone. I wouldn't do it. I would request a face-to-face with the person who wants you to attend their same-sex wedding. And you just request, we need to sit down and talk. I need to share 4 things with you. Here's the 4 things, okay? First thing I want to say to you, okay? I love you, verse 1. The elder to the lady chosen by God and to her children, whom I love in the truth. You are a part of our family forever. We will always celebrate your life that God gave. I love you, face to face. Okay? Not just this thorny issue, but there's other thorny issues you're going to face. First thing you want to do, request the face-to-face. When you got the face-to-face, first thing you want to say, I love you. That's why I requested the face-to-face. In fact, I looked into this even a little more, and I just kind of wondered why John wanted to sit down face-to-face with Mary, because I think there's so many misunderstandings that can occur when we assert truth. There's so many misunderstandings that sometimes it's best to do it face-to-face. And so in the YouVersion app, I've given like 5 things here why face-to-face will always be better than text-to-text or FaceTime to FaceTime or whatever. And when you're in face-to-face, it demonstrates importance to someone. Okay, when you request that meeting by that man or woman that's requesting your attendance at a same-sex wedding ceremony, and it's going to happen, guys. It's not going to go away. It's not going away. You're going to face it eventually. And when you're given that, put in that situation, I think face-to-face demonstrates importance to someone. Number 2, YouVersion app, here it's in the notes, it gives you an opportunity to react and adjust to the nonverbal cues. You ever try to deal with situations in your family and you need to deal with them when you're face-to-face with a family member? It's important to do it that way because you can see and read those nonverbal cues. 3, it enhances credibility and trust. 4, it builds relationships. 5, it gives an opportunity to address sensitive issues. I think that's why John says, this is going to be a 13-verse letter. Mary, I can't get into all the little tiddly details and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I'm afraid some things are going to be misunderstood. I love you, Mary. I love the people you're hosting, but there's these exceptions to the rule. There's these situations we got to deal with, and there's case by case, and I'm going to just have to get there in person, and we'll deal with it in person. But until then, here's what I would advise, and that's what he does in this letter. And that's what we must do. And so, in these thorny question issues, the first saying, I love you. First thing you want to say in that face-to-face. Second thing, slide 12, I ask you. I ask that we love one another. John asks that we love one another. I want to ask you a question in our hypothetical. If you knew that I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman for the express purpose of having or acquiring children and raising them, would you want me to consistently live out that belief? That's what I asked. Would you want me to consistently live it out? As your relative and as my worldview informs the way I am to live life, would you want me to live that out? That's what I ask. Third thing that you would say in these thorny question issues, and this is where the truth and love married together, John says, slide number 13, I caution you. Verse 8. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for. Discern what is true, what is loving, who you partner with, what choices you make. Listen, whether it's a man or a woman, I caution against this kind of same-sex relationship. In the long run, it's not going to fulfill your life. It's not going to complement your gender. It's not going to challenge you to live the selfless, to accomplish the selfless task of loving someone totally other than you. Son, I could never give you away to another man. Daughter, I gave you to God a long time ago. I cannot come to this wedding. And I caution you. I love you. Okay? I ask you. I caution you in love. And finally, John says, I hope to visit you, verse 12. I hope to visit you and talk with you face to face. No matter what you do, no matter what decision you end up making here, I'm going to look forward to being with you again. If you go through with this, you may, this may be what you're going to do no matter what I say. But this is why I can't attend the wedding. It's why I can't bake the cake. It's why I can't take the pictures. Why I can't sign the license. You understand. And going forward, this is the marriage of truth and love. It's what we must do as Christ followers as we think about taking the next step here in our spiritual journeys and being faithful to the truth and love mandate that John gives to us here. Okay? This is the way forward. And I invite you up into it. I invite all of us to live a life of truth and love. Let's pray together. Thank you, God, for this day. Thank you for your great grace. Thank you for overshadowing our lives every step of the way, and you brought us here this morning. And there may be some thorny issues that people are facing and wrestling with here today. Maybe it's family issues. Maybe people are dealing with the issue maybe I've presented here, or maybe there's some idea or viewpoint that's being represented by someone in the family, and we just don't know quite what to do or say. And I just pray you'd help us, give us courage to sit down and have the face-to-face. And when we sit down and have the face-to-face, you'll help us to communicate 4 things. Help us to say the I love you. Unless that's said, everything we say thereafter will never be received. To help us to say I love you. And there's some people here today who need to say I love you in a face-to-face with a family member. And I ask and pray you'd help them to have the courage to do that today. There's some here who need to ask that question. I ask you, is this what you're doing? Is it really about love? Is it really about truth? And perhaps there's some in our life path that we need to say, I caution you. Watch out that you don't lose what you've worked for. Watch out. Be careful. Decisions are being made. And these can be catastrophic. And then finally, that we all might share the I hope to visit you. That we can sit down again face to face, and even though our warnings aren't heeded, even though our face-to-faces aren't valued, we still hold out hope of sitting down with those that we are called to love, visiting with them, sharing with them, even though they choose to live differently. Then maybe we would believe that and that Christ would want them to live. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You've been a great group. Would you stand with me this morning?